Hello, Survivor Now Nation, Survivor Now podcast, StockWatch Nation, the nation of Survivor Now StockWatch. My name is Will. Joining with me is the one and only man with three names, the luxurious Josh Elliott Pickle. That's three names right there. Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Will, how do we feel? How do we feel about this most recent episode where I feel like the war maybe has not already started, but maybe the first shot was taken?
I think this was a really pivotal. Yes, we are. Don't you worry. We break promises a lot on StockWatch, but this time I'm real. Don't worry, Gemini. I got you. No, this was, I think, the end of a chapter for Survivor 48. I think when we talk about the season and going forward, we're going to really break it up with the three eras of a season. You know, you have your pre-jury, you have your early merge, and then you have your late game. I think we're in the late game now. Okay. I think we're kind of past the part of the season where she was really running the game and the downfall of the Vula 3. And then there's the honesty good guy group that formed and took out, Cedric, Chrissy. I think now we're in the end game where now we're getting strategy again. The season's not over and doomed, as everyone on Twitter is saying. I think this has been a great season so far. And I think this is a really complex tribe so far, because I want to be real with you, Josh. This doesn't really matter for StockWatch and what we do, but I wanted to just say that the season, for the first time since I think 43 or 42, the season's actually not spoiled whatsoever. So typically on Survivor, there'll be leaks and spoilers, right? So last season it was a pretty loose, unconfirmed rumor that Rome leaked the boot order by mistake. And so a lot of people, when they were talking about, Edgix and StockWatch and whatnot, they would know the boot order and they would pretend like they knew what was up. But here on Survivor Now, we don't do that, as you could tell by my blunders all season. However,
no, I don't read any of the fan forums as to what goes on in these games.
I
like to make up my own mind and say, hey, this is what happens. Because to be honest, I know that, the viewers don't know this, but last week I picked Eva as my winner pick. This week, Eva is not my winner pick, even though she got that safety without power. I switched again. We'll get to that, but I like it because for me, it keeps flip-flopping depending on what the narrative is of the episode and how, things play out between. So I'm excited to talk about why I think my winner pick is better than Will's winner pick, because Will, you have been riding high.
I have. Well, we'll get to Shaheen later. First off, before we really get into the thick of things, because I feel like we have a lot to talk about really with, I think, everyone now, even Mary and Star, who, surprise, is going to be bottom two like always. I think we still have room for discussion with them now, because now we can kind of tell how their game is going to end. Before we get to that, though, Josh, what was your opinion on this episode? Because I think this was actually the best episode of the season so far.
I think it was the most influential episode of the season, because I think this specific vote out is what's going to lead to why the winner pick that I have for today's list is why it's going to happen, why that person's going to eventually make it to the end. Because for me, the person who was voted out was very commanding in the way that he tried to get specific people out and who triumphed over the others. I think that that's a very important tell. But we'll get into it. I don't want to give too much away with the list, but I think that this, if I describe this episode in one word, it's going to be influential. This was extremely influential, and I believe that it's going to start here with whoever wins this season. It's gonna start with this vote.
What's crazy is I
Yeah, I agree, Jay. It is going to be
Yeah,
a defining move. It really will be 100%. And
yeah,
it started with David. To be
it does.
honest, David going. If we could start talking about
I,
David,
I was just gonna
yeah,
say,
to be honest, with David, that's such a big. It's such a big power move
it
because
is.
David. Let's look at the analyst. Like let's see. The stats show us that in a challenge, David and Joe are always going to be in the end, or a majority of those competitions. Those two are going to last the longest,
Mhm.
right? Wasn't it Joe and Eva and Mary and David for the one that Eva won? Then it was Joe
Mhm.
and David for the one that David won, and then it was Joe and David for the one that Joe won. So getting out David ensures that whole loyalty. I mean, look, David was loyal to that group, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the group has to be loyal to David. And I think
Mhm.
that's what might have got David. But if you take out a big comp threat, it leaves it more open to other competitors. But it also takes out a shield, right? I think now it's safe to say Joe would be the top threat, but it could be anyone's game. Eva showed that Eva's also capable. Kyle's shown that Kyle's also capable. I mean,
Yeah,
Shaheen was so close to lasting and competing with David and Joe and staying in that final three in that comp. So I'm
yeah.
curious to hear what you have to say, Will, about what you thought about David.
I thought David actually was and is the most compelling and complex, and I think he's the best character on this season. I love
I
a
like
good heel
David.
turn. I love when a player starts out either as a hero and then turns into a villain, or starts out as a villain turns into a hero. Perfect example is Kenny from Survivor Gabon. He started out as a plucky underdog and then eventually overplayed his hand. Eventually demanded that Bob would give up his idol for Kenny. And I think David has a lot of similar hallmarks where he starts out as a very likable, rootable figure, especially on Siva, a tribe that doesn't really have any standout heroes, right? It's mainly Camilla as brains. Kyle's a very likable guy, but he leans into Camilla's, villainy. And there's Chrissy, who is invisible, Charity, who's invisible, and Mitch, who good guy, but didn't have the strategy. And so David started out really in a really good position, and a lot of people had him pretty high. I think we had him pretty consistently ranked in our rankings. Always like second place, third place when talking about the Siva tribe. Sell. Absolutely.
I have a question for you, actually, on something that you brought up.
Yeah.
Do you see David as a hero or as a villain?
I think he needs to come back a second time. I made a joke about this before. I think if David ever comes back, what's going to happen is one of two things. Either A, he learns from his mistakes, his pitfalls, his follies, and he returns to being Siva David. A very likable guy, kind of showboaty, but respectable in his own rights. Or he doubles down and leans further into the I want to play a heroic game. And if that happens, we will have the return of South Pacific coach.
Well,
Who is
I would see that. I could see that because
Yeah.
let's see this hypothetically, let's put ourselves in that position. If
Mhm.
I was to play a returnee season with David, I would actually want to play with David because if David is going to be loyal to me, if I can be the Mary to David's game, or
Mhm.
I could be potentially that Kyle that David wanted to kind of have that main one-on-one alliance with at the beginning of the season, I would want to work with David. So if David did come in and says, listen, everyone can say for my first game, I played a loyal game. Sure, maybe I could work better on jury management and how I can speak to people, and there are better ways of wording things.
Mhm.
However, I do want to double down on that
Yeah.
loyalty game because people want to play with people who want to have their back. And David was that player. Now, here's
Yeah.
how I feel. I feel that there's a definitive answer here. David is a hero. He's always been a hero.
No.
No, he has.
Okay.
Everyone else
I'll buy it.
made him out to be a villain. And this is how I see it. Like David's intuition in this game. Sure, he may not have been right on everything, but he was right on the most important thing. And it's so influential, I guess, to me as a viewer in what the narrative the editors are trying to display to the audience is that David was trying to put on a radar, Camilla and Kyle are a duo. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Joe, why aren't you doing anything about it? I'm trying to tell you they need to be looked at. And nobody even turned an eye at Kyle and Camilla. They all said, it's David. Look at how Kyle went around, got Shaheen, and said, hey, David and Mary, they're going after you, right?
Mm-hmm.
How Kyle was able to pull Joe aside and have a conversation with him about David and how he kind of had that connection one-on-one on the beach where they were talking about each other's pasts. That's important. And because David goes home saying that stuff to a majority of the players, that's why I have my winner pick where I am. And I think David is the most influential vote out this season. It's what starts the narrative for the winner of Survivor.
Here's the thing. I gotta back up Jay because I think I fully believe David and David's attempt to play a heroic game, and I do see credit to that. I'm not saying that he's a villain because he preached loyalty, but what made David such a villain in my eyes, and the reason why I think he's a very complex character, is because you can tell that he truly believes in his alliance and he truly believes in the power structure, right? I feel like a lot of the times we'll see an alliance and they all preach loyalty and honesty and truth, and they're trying to just use that as a scapegoat, and really they're backstabbing each other, right? I think, again, Upolu 5, I keep comparing David and Survivor 48 to South Pacific because I feel like David belongs so well and it would mesh so well on the Upolu tribe and the Upolu family. But and the reason is that the game was actually going on around David. There's no room for a David player, and his inability to adapt to that and to cut his losses and say that someone is going to betray me. Instead, he tried to just steamroll any strategic conversations. He didn't let his alliance die. He tried to keep it held together, trying to just vote out Mitch, and he should have cut his losses. And I think the way he came across was just very villainous, and he can be as correct as possible. Zan says he can go the Thai direction and be a villain after being a hero. I think we're giving stuff to talk about, and that's why I love David so much.
I don't know why I want to keep talking about this because I feel like I have such a different viewpoint on how I saw David as a player. I feel like the cast projected that David was this villainous player to the audience because that was what Kyle and Camilla wanted everyone else to believe. We're just following the winner's narrative, and the winner's narrative wants us to believe at that moment that David is a villain. David, there was a point where Kyle said in the thing, like, I don't really appreciate people shouting at me in this moment. And I don't know if anybody else caught this. David wasn't shouting at anybody. I think I said that out loud when I was watching the episode. I'm like, Kyle made a comment about that. And I was like, David's not shouting, but yet everyone else is saying that he is. And I'm confused as to why the editors aren't showing that, which for me, it tells me that the narrative is starting to be formulated around who the winner is and what the winner kind of their mindset wants in this game. And if they want the cast to believe that David's a villain, it leads me to believe that Kyle or Camilla is one of the winners of this season. I can't. It's such an influential move because they spread so many lies this episode, especially Kyle. He got so many people to turn on David. So many. It's the fact that they got David out. Who's going to be the person that's going to question Kyle and Camilla now? No one.
We'll see about that because I understand what you're saying, and I see why you're saying it. However, I think there's something more going on behind the scenes that we haven't seen yet. I think there's a lot of question marks still with how the season's been edited and how a lot of characters have been portrayed. And I understand why your winner pick is your winner pick. And once we get to him, I will explain why I disagree. And also the lovely people in chat, if you will also want to put who you think is going to win while we talk about some of the bottom people. I know Daryl believes Ava is the winner. I totally see that.
I'm gonna. Can I speak about this real quick?
Yeah.
I don't think, and here's why I'm gonna double down on Kyle, and I'll keep going on here. But I just want to say this before I forget it. Another reason why I don't think Eva's gonna win and why she's not my winner pick this week is because of the fact that Eva had a conversation with people that she got a safety without power, and Kyle was one of the people who heard it. So that means he has the knowledge to be able to blindside her on knowing what she's got in her pocket. And I think that puts her in a very vulnerable position. You need to tell Joe, maybe Shaheen. That's it. No one else about that safety without power. Especially with everybody turning on David, going against that kind of trust within that alliance. Once you go against David, that whole alliance is gone, unless you have a separate thing going with Kyle. But I need to reevaluate that.
I gotcha. I'm going to put a pin in this conversation because I want to turn our attentions to some of the outsiders. I want to talk about Mary so far, who you have last. I have at number 7. I straight up, I don't think Mary is winning Survivor 48. I think her edit really fell off once they went, and there was plenty of room. And narratively, if she was the winner or made a deeper run or had more significance to the story, we would hear from her a lot. We would hear why she sided with David, and like how that relationship fostered her game plans now that the Vula tribe is completely wiped away. The fact that Mary still has had one confessional across the last 3 episodes is really, really telling. I understand people believe that she could be getting shielded right now because she was tied with David, and David was a clear-cut villain in terms of what the edit want to show us. We can argue about whether or not David was really a villain all day long, but I felt like it was clear that we were supposed to not root for David, especially in the last episode.
I rooted for him this whole season. I feel like I was very on the opposite side. I was
rooting
for David.
But that, I'm just saying in terms of negativity, David had a lot of negativity and baggage. But something like that, Jay, where she has no screen time. Why do we think this? I have a theory, and I don't think it's too far-fetched. I do think there is a world where Mary could be the person who gets idled out by Ava. I think this because...
Ooh, that's tough. Yeah, that could make sense. I could see that.
The only reason why I think that is because normally players who get voted out via an advantage or twist, typically they don't have the biggest edit except for Sharif Fields and Game Changers, but that's Sharif Fields and Game Changers. And, a player who didn't really have a lot of control at any point in the game outside of peaking early pre-merge and then getting idled out by the majority of Alliance is not a recipe for a lot of screen time, which sucks because I do want more of Mary. I think everyone wants more of Mary, but we have to kind of be realistic. I do think there is a world where she goes next. I don't think so. I do think there is a world.
I'm not saying that she goes next with my ranking. She's on the bottom because she was outside of that vote. That was it. She was clearly, I would say, in my opinion, the most blindsided because David was technically her number 1. I feel like Mary's gone through a lot in this game as a player. Mary lost Kevin very early in the season, was nearly beheaded on Vula, had a successful shot in the dark play that, we still forget. We actually, I got to write that in my notes because I feel like that's so long ago. Shot in the dark play. Mary's on the bottom because people aren't telling her what's going on. I mean, you wouldn't tell Mary that you're going to vote out David on a night that David's going to go home, especially when Shot in the Darks are still in play. David definitely was blindsided last night. I think that's absolutely for certain. But other people, I feel like were a little bit more involved, and Mary was just on the outside.
Yeah. And Jay also sees her going at 7. Do you think there's a world where she makes final tribal council?
I think it's possible, but I will state what I said at the merge episode. I believe maybe like episode 6 or 7 for us.
Mm-hmm.
If with Mary being the last person from Vula, she has a uphill battle for this rest of the game. She needs to make herself be a number, and she needs to make herself an essential part of someone's alliance. She needs to say, hey, listen, I'm a vote. I will do what you say. She needs to wait out her time until she can find like a group of 2 others at a final 7 or a final 6 and say, listen, let's make a move. Now's the time. She's got to play into the numbers, and she might have to take a few sacrifices. You know, she might have to lose a David here and there. She might have to get rid of a Star or get rid of a Mitch. But I think it's important to say that Mitch also is not being voted out as well. People are saving Mitch. People are saving Shaheen. It's shown time and time again. But Mary, I don't know where the trajectory is going. She's very clearly on the bottom. I don't know if this loyalty alliance, the strong person alliance, is going to go through anymore, even though they got David out. Does it still stay intact just without David? If that happens, I think Mary, it's going to be everyone else with Mary on the outside, because David was the only one who really brought Mary into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so maybe she'll have a breakout episode. I do think we'll get more screen time from Mary now that David's gone. I think the episode's going to open with Mary being like, I was just blindsided. What happened? And then she'll kind of be the scrappy player that we know Mary of or Mary for. Even then, though, Jay, I feel like Mary, normally people with Charlie Brown edits, we see them try. We see where their head is at in the game, and we understand why they're making the moves they're making. It just doesn't work out. We don't know where Mary's head is at outside of trusting David. And that's honestly all I really have to say about Mary as well. Is there anything else we're missing?
No, I just Mary, not a lot of confessionals. I feel like that's really unfortunate, but just being left out of the vote is the reason why I put you at the bottom. However, this isn't me putting Mary at the bottom and saying, yeah, you're at the bottom. I feel like my bottom 3 picks, like all of them are the most left out of votes. Like they're the least in the know. I guess that's the best way of saying it. Any one of them could be, the next person on the chopping block. Let's see who our number 7 player is.
It's Star. I actually think Star is going next. I know she's been riding the bottom, the last place consistently, but something in my bones tells me that her trying to throw Shaheen under the bus, was it Shaheen? Who did Star try to gun for?
She did. Actually, I think it's very important because I wrote this down. I quote, I don't know what y'all talking about, but I came here to tell y'all to open your ears, please. Let's do Shaheen. And I was like, yes. I got so excited when Star said that. It was such a great line for them to add. I loved it. I agree. I actually consistently have been leaving Star. If you have the averages, not the averages, I guess, if you took each episode's player count, if there's 8 people, 9 people left, Star has kind of been right underneath the midway point, which is a sweet spot. in terms of a ranking. You're not the next person to go, but you're not on the top where people are like overtly threatened by you. I feel like Star isn't going to go next because nobody said her name. People want Star in this game because they're not threatened by Star at this point, or at least they don't feel threatened by Star.
Yes. My only caveat to that is that normally I ignore secret scenes, and normally I only chalk up secret scenes. So if you have a big secret scene where it like highlights you in a good light, then you're not winning the game. Star has one where she goes up to Joe and Cheyenne, and all she asks is, "Hey, do you have a Final Three plan? If so, what do you see?" Right? And Joe and Cheyenne both go, "I haven't thought about Final Three yet. Haven't done this, haven't done that." And Star's like, "I know you're lying because you would not think about Final Three, right?" And so she's definitely playing hard, and there's a part to her game that we're not seeing. And so I think what it's setting up for is a Star overplaying her hand or throwing herself out of the game as well. Also, Star apparently clocked that Mitch, Camilla, and Cheyenne were trying to rig the journey against her.
No, that's what I was saying last week, Will. I would be upset. That tells me that you're against me. It does. It does.
Yeah. But
it's a good point, Jay. Like, and
it is.
Let's talk about that, right? That secret scene. Is Star wrong though with what Star is saying?
But if Star was the winner, we would see that on TV. It would not be a secret scene.
Okay. I guess maybe I'm thinking more in terms of like the strategy of the game.
Yeah.
Is Star wrong though? Everybody's thinking about Final Three. I feel like there's a better way to say it. But
yeah.
Like I mean, I would want to be like
ranking Star at number 8 for me is not indicative of how I think she is as a player. I actually think if you put Star on another season, I think if you put Star on a more boring season, I think you put her on like 44, 42, a season that didn't have a lot of like standout characters outside of like, or a season with a top heavy cast, I should say, like 44, 42, maybe even 41 as well. I think Star shines a lot more. The problem is that there's 5 main characters that clearly one of them is going to win. And so Star could be playing a really good game. And I think she is playing a pretty good game. I think the fact that she's been on the bottom, she's been an outsider the entire game, but no one has said her name outside of the pre-jury, I think is very impressive. And I understand why she would, in theory, overplay her hand. The problem is that she's just going up against an alliance bonded by loyalty, an alliance that's trauma bonded. Because when I view the alliance of Cheyenne, Camilla, Kyle, and Joe, they came together because of their backgrounds and their stories. Joe and Ava, they were locked in because Ava opened up to Joe about her autism. So many moving parts and so many people that bonded together for reasons outside of the game and not just strategy. And so it's a lot harder for Star to break that because she's not trying to break strategic bonds. She's trying to crack into friendships. And there's only so much a really good player can do. And so I think Star just got insanely unlucky this season, this game, this edit. And as much as it sucks to rank her that low, I do have to not think about the fact that she went to Joe and Cheyenne about the Final Three plans, or she did go to Chrissy about the journey being rigged against her. And I kind of have to throw that out the window because it's not shown to us explicitly on TV. And so for that reason, I think she's not winning the game. And I think there's another path that she took.
Why do you think that because you think that the Final Three conversation puts a target on her back?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't think it puts a target on her back. I think it sets her up to overplay her hand.
Okay, if that happened, though, I feel like the editors would show that because it shows Star's game in a negative way that makes her look to be the next to go. Then not showing that leads me to believe that Star could possibly actually go to the end. Star's not being talked about. Nobody fears Star. I feel like this is Star's perfect season because Star's a big character, but Star's not one of the biggest characters. There's a lot of other bigger personalities that are really overshadowing Star this season that might be great shields for Star later in the game. I keep having Star at this medium because, like, you know what? People are still willing to listen to Star, but they're not willing to write Star's name down. People said, let's write Mitch's name over Star's, right?
Yeah.
Even though, like, remember, David did say that he wanted to work with Star at some point, but still, people are willing to write Mitch's name over Star's. That's important. I actually ranked Star over Mitch.
That being said, though, we could also talk about Mitch too, but Mitch was being called a social player, a jury threat as well. And people talk about Mitch's story a lot as well. And again, she was also left outside of the vote. She also voted for Mitch. And so the fact that she voted for Mitch, someone who's another outsider as well, and not trying to stick to her guns and trying to take a stab at the majority alliance, is also kind of risky, and I don't understand that move. And why I don't know why they wouldn't include Star. That's the problem when it comes to like these under the radar players who get a bad edit, and we have to make room for 10 more Joe confessionals. No offense to Joe, or 10 more confessionals about how Kyle and Camilo are our secret duo. Like, I really wish we saw more of Star.
I do too, but I feel like we're not seeing a lot of Star because Star's not really in a lot of the strategic conversations. I mean, we've seen the same alliance kind of dominate the conversations this entire game. It's either you were in that big alliance or you were an outsider. You were an outsider hearing the information from someone in that alliance. That's how it's role played the entire game. Now with David gone, is there a new alliance that's going to form? That I want to see, but can somebody include Mitch? Because I feel like if Mary and Star are going to be left out of the vote, and at least Mitch is going to be involved in the vote, then include Mitch, because clearly Mitch isn't going against you. He can be an asset. And you can make Mitch the new David. You do know that, right? Like, I think I'm ready to talk about Mitch.
I'm ready to talk about Mitch. I have Mitch at 4.
Ooh, you have Mitch high.
Okay, so let me explain real quick, because the way I do my rankings, it's a little strange and it's not clear. Do I think Mitch has the 4th best shot or playing the 4th best game? No. I have Mitch as my last possible contender, which means everyone from 5 to 8, I do not think is winning Survivor 48, and I've ruled them out entirely. I think Mitch still, there's a very slim possibility, a very small chance. I call my dark horse pick because he has some weird hallmarks for a potential, like, out of nowhere, out of left field win where, let's say, the Honesty and Loyalty Alliance does split up, right? And what if it is really bitter and really emotional and friendships are broken and the jury is bitter? And Mitch is someone who was targeted by the Alliance at numerous points. His name was constantly thrown up, and he constantly found a way to find a way, right? He constantly maneuvered his way through the game. And while he was never in the know, he was always a good friend to everyone and a good sport. And that's the only path I see Mitch winning. I don't see him winning because of his strategic acumen. I just think that Mitch is a really cool guy. And sometimes that is enough.
I see Mitch as a strong competitor in this game. I just feel like he hasn't been dealt the right hand yet. Not a lot of people are coming up to Mitch with, alliance, like, hey, I'm solid with you. Let's talk. The way that I like to put it is Mitch isn't in the room where it happens. He's not in that, war room with the conversations that are being had with, whatever alliances are making the decision. And I'm hoping that this shift in the dynamic will open up room for Mitch to become a more dominant player strategically this game, because I don't feel like people are allowing Mitch the opportunity to be the centerfold in a move or to hear Mitch out. Mitch came to Siva with a plan, but clearly that didn't work. I feel like Kyle and Camilla would go in with their own agenda, and Shaheen would balance between the Joe and Eva and Kyle and Camilla now, because Shaheen right now is perfectly in the middle of both of those duos. So that really leaves Mitch on like a spectrum where he's like, where do I go? Do I feel like to a certain point you'd have to say, I need to ride this out until the right time. Mitch needs to. I shouldn't say needs to. What I feel like the trajectory that's going to go for Mitch is going to have to play this game where he's going to have to do what the majority wants. And at a certain point, Mitch is going to have to make a move. And that time that Mitch tries to make that move is either going to be the time that Mitch strikes and puts himself in a really good spot for the rest of the game, or it's going to be the time that Mitch goes. I'm only putting Mitch on the bottom because Mitch is number one, I feel like, or the best shot at a connection from what I'm seeing would be Star. But
Star just voted him.
Are really, really low on the totem pole as of right now. I really want to put Mitch up higher. I mean, I've loved him, but I just, as what we're seeing in terms of the game, it puts the ranking in a really tough spot for me, because people are writing down Mitch's name, and that's what I'm struggling with right now. It's like whose name is being written down and whose isn't.
Well, but don't forget too, this is the first time Mitch's name was written down. And so I'm curious to see how he would respond to that, because Mitch also
didn't say write down his name.
Nope.
Was I wrong about that? I thought.
Yeah.
Oh no, she was gonna write Mitch's name down, but then Mitch blocked it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So, and that, I feel like that's also different because, say went out or was going to go out. I want to see how Mitch is going to respond to players that he had a relationship with writing down his name, because like someone like David, Mitch has been on David's tribe for the entire game, you know. He's also been working loosely with like Mary. Like, I want to see how he's going to come back from camp and say, my name was written down, I was a target, how do I proceed? Because something about Mitch, I don't mean this negatively, I just think he's going to take it not very well. And that's another fear of mine. I think he's going to play more emotionally. But that's just how I feel.
So hear me out. Hear me out.
I'm hearing you.
Okay.
I'm hearing you.
I think David's going to be another bitter juror, but he's only going to be bitter to the people in that alliance, which leaves out Mary, Star, and Mitch. Now, when we look at the three people on the jury, Cedric, Chrissy, and David, two of them are SIVA members that were with Mitch for a long time.
Yeah, true.
Cedric and Mitch had a conversation, that 2.0 tribe, that they were on SIVA, I believe. They were on SIVA 2.0 together. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
something like that.
They felt they had a good connection on that tribe.
They did. And
I feel like right now, with Chrissy being upset with, some of the bigger players in the game, honestly, I see those three players right there, considering a vote thrown at Mitch for a win. So honestly, Will, if Mitch goes to the end, I would like to say maybe this is crackpot. I don't even want to say it's crackpot. If Mitch makes it to the end, I don't think Mitch will be a 0-vote finalist. I'm going to say it right now. If Mitch makes it to the end, I think he's getting at least one vote. I honestly feel like Mitch will get a vote.
I do think losing finalist is in the cards. I think there's a very slim
That's
chance.
fine. He can lose. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
I think Cedric votes for him. I think that's what it is.
I can 100% see at least one of those jury members sitting on the jury voting because David's going to be upset about everybody in that alliance, right? Chrissy's going to be upset at all of those bigger players or anybody else who just wasn't considering making a move. And I just don't see that, the game that Mitch has played is not worthy of a vote. All three of those players are in a position with how that ended to respect the game that Mitch has played. This is where I want to say, even though Mitch is on the bottom, Mitch still has a mountain to climb. But getting to the end, I think you'd get at least a vote. You'd still have to convince some of the swings. You'd have to do some convincing. But Mitch does get a vote if Mitch is in the end. I don't see 0 vote finalists with Mitch.
I see that. I have another question, though. I'm reading this comment from Ronnie, right? David is only better to Joe and Shaheen, which Shaheen was kind of a shock. Do you think this is going to be the first season where all 3 finalists get a jury vote? Because I'm assuming.
What do you mean first season?
Or first new era season. That's my apologies.
Is that really a stat?
Yeah. Every vote has been either 5-3-0 or 7-1-0.
Wow. I am finding that out right now. It's tough. It really depends on who's sitting in the end. Yeah. If it's a Kyle, Joe, Eva, Shaheen, Camilla, any combination of those players in the final 3, sure. But I feel like the narrative always has become shifting it from, okay, let's develop let's develop our own ideas of who the top 2 players are, and let's just votes between them. Honestly, new era, this should be a heads up. Maybe if this is what's happening for the next 10 seasons of in consideration of the new era, make 50 a final 2.
I like that idea.
Just make it a final 2. Bring it do it Cook Islands, but reverse it, right? Cook Islands was the first season that kind of threw out a final 3 and was like, hey, look at this.
Micronesia is what you're thinking of.
Wait, really?
Yeah, Micronesia was supposed to be a final 3, but it got turned into a final 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, look, whatever. All I saw was Cook Islands was the first real final 3 that happened. So switch it up. Maybe that should be the biggest surprise of season 50. Just don't ever say it's a final 3, and then tell them when you're at a final 4 that this is going to be a final 2. No fire making. We don't want fire making.
Real quick, I want to just kind of respond, not to a specific comment, but just I know Daryl, Jay, and Ronnie are all kind of talking amongst each other about screen time. Mitch has been getting compared to Gabler a lot. I kind of see both sides. I think on one hand, I do think that Mitch right now is very invisible, but I feel like we're still hearing from Mitch. I don't think he's ever had a no confessional episode. I could be wrong. Jay is going to fact check me, I assume. But Mitch, we've still heard from Mitch every once in a while. It's just right now he's kind of hiding because, again, a lot of the screen time is about the Loyalty Alliance and kind of their rise and fall. I think Gabler also had a quieter side of the edit when Jesse and Cody were in power. And so if we are really following along with that idea, Mitch could still be like Gabler, though I see both sides of it. My apologies. And Jay agrees with me too. Maybe for 50, they'll do a final 2. And David loves Eva and Kyle. I think David would like Kyle. I think if Kyle owns the fact that he played a really cutthroat strategic game, I think David would almost respect it because he kind of saw it coming and he kind of saw that Kyle and Camilla were tight. And I think Kyle could also have a good excuse for David. I think if Kyle says, me and Camilla linked up really early in Siva, and we were bonded and I was loyal, I had to be loyal to her, I think he understands that. And yeah, Mitch has had a confessional in every episode. That's better than Mary, and better than Joe. Speaking of Joe, never mind.
It's not Joe. It's not
Joe.
Joe.
We have Eva, who had a horrific episode that got saved last minute. I do not have.
I dropped. Remember, everyone, Eva was my winner pick last week. Eva dropped for me because there were some fumbles that I didn't like. You don't tell anybody that you got something. I know that Shaheen was there.
Also, my graphic is wrong. I have Eva at number 3 for me, not number 5. But can I talk about Eva real quick? I think this was a really bad episode for her because I've noticed a lot of the stronger players. Yeah, Shaheen did say that, but the edit also left in a lot of confessionals about Mitch being a threat, Shaheen being a threat. We could even mention maybe, I think there might have been one on Kyle from David. Either which way, Eva really went against her own word, and it worked out and didn't. I think, right? I think her saying she wants to keep her advantage a secret, she wants to keep it hidden, and then immediately telling her alliance, including Kyle, who then leaked it to Camilla. I think that was a blunder. And yeah, it's a bit strong, but I think like going against your own words like that and your own narrative like that, I think her opening the episode saying, I don't want any one of my crew to go, and then having David go home, a person she was very close with. On paper, it was a very bad episode for Eva. However, I also think that she kind of made up for it at the very end, and also Eva can go home with the idol as well. I do see that happening, but what do you think?
Here's my issue, and you know what, Ronnie, spot on.
Yeah.
You telling everyone there means that you're susceptible to the crack. And obviously we as the viewer know that Kyle and Camilla are up to no good. But now that Kyle has the information that Eva has a safety without power, you can plan around that, because that would have been the secret. What I don't like is Eva said last episode, I want this as a secret. And Eva didn't keep it. Eva couldn't keep it. And that is what concerns me. It's like when you're thinking of, war plans, right? You're going to battle. You don't want to give away your arsenal. You don't want to expose when you're going to strike or how you could possibly strike. The way that Kyle and Camilla were able to orchestrate that whole idol move earlier in the season, they did it because they were quiet about it. And it seems that there are people who struggle with being able to keep that information close to heart. That is not something that I would have told people in open forum. I probably would have told them one-on-one. And I would have told them individually. I would have just told the people who I trusted the most. One, maybe two people. Not a whole alliance.
But the only thing is, I do think that Eva as well believes in the alliance and the idea of the alliance. I think her, David, and Joe are the most like, I'm in it for the alliance, and I truly believe in the cause. And so I think that's the only downside to the part of the reason why I have her at number 3 and not dead last is because, again, her edit up to this point has been very strong. And I really like the amount of strategic content we've been getting from Eva, even if she is hypocritical. Not hypocritical, you know what I'm trying to say. And I do think it got saved again by her last confessional. And she did say that, but she also explained her rationale, I think. Because at the very end, right before Tribal, she's like, hey, I'm going to Tribal, and like David's been sketching me out. I don't like Kyle's plans. I don't know what to do. And yeah, there's a lot of positivity for Eva. Part of me doesn't think she's the winner. And I just think that there's two other people who have had stronger edits and stronger gameplay than Eva.
I hear that.
And is there anything else you have to say about Eva as well?
It's tough for me. What I want to talk about is who I think is this next player that we have listed up here. I think maybe.
Is it Joe?
Yes, it is. It's actually Joe. It's a very important thing that I want to talk about. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not. I wasn't on the island. But Joe was talking about, there was a conversation talking about going against your word. And it's another thing that I want to point out where I think David's intuition this game has been really spot on. Because what I'm confused about is that didn't Joe say last episode, we can do Chrissy tonight and we'll do Camilla tomorrow? Why didn't that happen? Are we forgetting about that? Because if I'm David, honestly, and I remember that, that's no bueno. That's not good. And it's an inconsistency with me for Joe. I'm not liking it's blind loyalty. People are being loyal to people that are eventually going to get them. And I don't think that they're seeing that. Survivor is about not only being loyal, but you need to be able to see through the cracks and adapt to it. And I feel that Joe and Shaheen have been susceptible to Kyle and Camilla ever since that idol blowout. Ever since that idol play and they made that alliance where all of them were like, us four, we're going to be tight. Ever since then, they've just taken Kyle and Camilla's words for face value. And it's a crucial error in their game.
Yeah.
It shows me time and time again that Joe will blindly believe what Kyle is saying.
True.
And it's another reason why I'm so concerned about Joe's longevity in this game. It's why I have him ranked there. Because
I will say,
Kyle and Camilla are capable of taking him out before fire. They are. At this point, I think they are.
I think my struggle is I think Joe has had overall just a stronger edit than Kyle and Camilla. I understand that it's like the traditional good guy, American hero, Terry Dietz edit, right? That we'll see every once in a while. Kyle used emotional manipulation on Joe. I see that. I think Joe is either going to have a downfall that starts with this episode right now, where Joe grapples with the realization that he can't play an honorable game and be friends with everyone and find success, right? He's going to learn that there's going to be people that go against his best wishes. The only thing I believe in, I do think that this is going to be a very crackpot theory. I'm going to play before I get into the idea, but okay. I think I know how this next episode is going to happen. Walk with me here. That the 4-4 alliance, right? I mean, realistically, it's actually the 3-5 alliance, right? I think people are going to target Lagi no matter what, right? And I think Eva, Joe, and Shaheen, they kind of have a tough battle to climb. However, part of me thinks that someone along the way is going to leak this information to the Lagi tribe. I think either Star wants to play a big game and wants to make a move that doesn't go with the majority. And now that Lagi is no longer the majority, that they become the underdogs, and that Kyle and Camilla, two players who have been in the majority every step of the way, will get ratted out, right? And I think a player like Mary would be able to see that from Kyle and Camilla, right? Because is Mary really tight with Kyle and Camilla, two players that just took out her number one ally, number one target.
No, but it puts Star at another spot where Star is actively wanting to go after Shaheen, and that's what worries me is that Star is willing to target them. That means Star is willing to go after Kyle and Camilla, and Shaheen, Joe, it maybe even Eva, because Eva's with Joe. They're not going to want to go after Kyle and Camilla. It puts them now in the best spot, even over Shaheen, because Shaheen, even though Shaheen's making all these moves. He's making all these moves around Kyle and Camilla while still blindly trusting them. That's what concerns me, Will, is we haven't had that conversation yet about Shaheen. I mean, we'll have that next go. But my point that I'm going to bring up, and I'd like you to bring it up when we get there, Kyle, Camilla, and Shaheen, if that's a final three, Shaheen's got to work for that vote because he's looking like third place.
I don't think that's going to last. I think that alliance is dying next episode. I think what happens is I think everyone not a part of that Loggy 3 is going to link up, right? I think Mary's going to feel sketched by Kyle and Camilla because David went out. I think Mitch is going to feel worried by Star because Star wrote Mitch's name down. And so I think there's going to be some uneasiness going into the episode, right? And I think that uneasiness is going to doom that plan from happening. I think someone along the way tips off Eva. I think they can use it to, one, take out a power player in Kyle or Camilla. Two, get rid of an idol because they're kind of forcing Eva to play the idol regardless. And three, you kind of can tip your hat off to a big move. You break up that alliance regardless, and the game opens up for everyone else. I think we're spending a lot of the season worried about Shaheen being the big threat, Mitch being the big threat, Joe and Eva being the threats. I think it's too obvious. And I think that Kyle and Camilla are kind of running out of steam going into the end game. I understand where you're coming from.
I'm going to disagree with you because of the fact that Kyle, now with that safety without power information, has something. The information about Shaheen having an idol with David to split everyone up, that move that Camilla did, that never got leaked. That never got exposed. That never got blown up in Camilla's face. Camilla has shown time again. That was the second time that Camilla did a little sneak, tell someone a lie and didn't get caught. First time was with the idol. Playing low-key that, hey, Kyle and me aren't that close. Yeah, you can look through Kyle's bag, but I'm going to go tell Kyle later. That's brilliant game move number one. Number two, telling David about the idol, getting that separation going, even though it didn't work, it still didn't blow up in Camilla's face. But who's to say that Camilla won't just go to Eva and say, hey, listen, someone's going to vote out Joe and you. They're going to split the votes. Flush the safety without power. Flush the idol. Now that they have that information, they can plan around that. How can we either blindside Eva, blindside Joe, or just make sure that those advantages are gone? Because it's great that you have an idol, Eva, but it's not great that everyone in the final 8 knows that you have an idol. And now you have a safety without power. And now half of those people, more of them, Kyle, Shaheen, Joe, Eva, Camilla, at least 5 people know about that.
Yeah.
That is not power. If people at this stage can play around it and are still playing at that assassin-like level with nobody on your back. David was the one person to do it, and now nobody's going to bat an eye to Kyle and Camilla for the rest of the season. Nobody's questioning them. They're going to be walking the yellow brick road, Will. They're going to be saying, we're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
All right. I'm taking off the gloves, dog. We're talking Camilla now. It's about time.
Listen,
I have Camilla at 5.
With the analogy,
here's the thing about Camilla and Kyle, and the reason why I think this was actually a really bad episode for them. They spent the entire season, right? The entire season saying Shaheen is a dangerous snake. I don't like him. I don't trust him. He's a big threat, right? But the first person they go to, the very first person, is not Joe. It's not an outsider like Mitch or Star. The first person Kyle went to is Shaheen, right? That exactly counteracts the whole narrative they've been going off of the entire time. Camilla and Kyle's
go to Shaheen about who?
About voting David.
Okay, but let's talk about that, right? Everything changed, right? He's sitting there in a conversation where if you're like, put yourself in that position, you're here. I'm David, you're Kyle. Your best friend is literally getting outed out. I want to vote out your best friend, Will, and I want to vote out your best friend at this tribal council. Okay. Yep. I'm now becoming a threat to your game because you want to keep your best friend in here. So now it changes. Shaheen is not the next person to go for you. You need Shaheen, and you need to get Shaheen
first
against David.
But not first. If I was Kyle, I would focus on an outsider. I would go up to Mitch. Yes, because...
But you already planted the seed for David to go against Shaheen, so you can already use that and manipulate Shaheen to believe that David is against Shaheen. It already works. The seed was already planted by Camilla. So if there were conversations that we didn't hear, the seed was already planted. Maybe it wasn't even a conversation. Maybe it was just the way that David treated Shaheen. But that still means, remember, Shaheen he said, I've been working on this for 5 days against David. So he got that heads up. Maybe he had that intuition. But that conversation Camilla had maybe was just a little spark.
But the way it's played out to us, the way that the audience is receiving the information is that it's 8 episodes of Kyle not trusting Shaheen whatsoever, Camilla not trusting Shaheen whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, now that David is targeting Camilla, Kyle works with Shaheen. I understand that there's stuff that happening behind the scenes, but from our perspective, it's mainly Kyle and Shaheen, and the edit to me is showing that Kyle went back on his word from his confessionals. It's going against the narrative and the story he's been building up. Not just that, but Kyle the entire season also has been saying how him and Camilla are the secret duo that no one is expecting. The only person to not really see Kyle and Camilla as a duo is Shaheen, unfortunately enough. I do give y'all that. That's
what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying. It concerns me because Shaheen and Joe have shown to us multiple times they will blindly believe Kyle and Camilla.
But they're not at the same time, though, there's still Mary in all of this, who has information from David, because David's number one was Mary. That's who he was working with, right? And so I know for a fact, because Mary also talked about it to Joe, we saw a scene where David and Mary were talking to Joe, and Mary's like, Kyle and Camilla are sketchy. They are scary. And so I could honestly see, I could see Mary flipping. I could see her blaming Kyle for the move, honestly, I think. And I could see Mary thinking that, yes, Joe went back on his word. Yes, Joe, lied. But also Joe was kind of put in that situation regardless, because the vote leading up to it was from Kyle, Shaheen, and Camilla. I understand that they don't know that, but I feel like it's not Joe's plan. It was just Joe went back on his word. And I think that scene was...
I think it also could be a breakout episode for Mary, because this could be another situation of like Mary losing another Kevin. Mary loses David. And now how does Mary overcome that? I could see either Mary overcomes it or Mary goes out swinging, trying to get the people who got him out. Either or. Camilla, I ranked at a number 2 because, listen, they've shown that they can still not be questioned. And it's strictly off of this. If Joe said last episode, we'll do Chrissy now and do Camilla later on the night, like literally tomorrow, we'll do Camilla tomorrow, and that didn't happen this episode. Not only that, Camilla was never mentioned as a potential option realistically from Joe this entire episode. That concerns me. And it means it shows to me that people are not putting them on the radar, that people aren't questioning it. And it's why I'm just kind of starting to believe that, David, that conversation with Joe, it wasn't about the, I went against my word. It was more so David trying to say, listen to me. I'm trying to give you a heads up and you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I see that. And I also want to talk about Kyle now.
The king! Yes, the king.
Here's the thing with Kyle. Kyle has had a very, very weird, almost one-note episode. And part of me feels worried because let's take it back. Let's take it back to the formation of the alliance between Shaheen, Joe, Camilla, and Kyle.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking about the Vula 2.0 tribe.
Vula 2.0.
Yes.
Right? They come together, and it starts with Shaheen opening up, right? And then I think Camilla, and then Joe. Kyle was not talking. Kyle did not have a moment then. He did not have a moment where he's like, hey, we're talking about our backgrounds. I did this. We didn't know Kyle's story. We don't know who Kyle really was until this episode.
Isn't that important though?
It is, but
I feel like this was like equivalent to the episode that Rachel had, where Rachel was kind of like, where Rachel was about to be voted out and Rachel played the aisle. That's kind of how I felt.
But I feel like I view it differently because I view it as Kyle not blending too well into his alliance. Because I feel like we always hear from Kyle playing a really good game, but I don't know how much of it we honestly, truly, really see. Part of me thinks Kyle is the actual dragon of the season. Because of that, I think setting him up later down the line, kind of independently from everyone else on a tribe, in a cast, in a season where everyone is so personally connected with each other, is bad for Kyle's game and optics. I think that Kyle, again, the entire season where he's like, me and Camilla need to have a secret duo, and gets ratted out by David. And as much as we talk about last episode was a bad episode for Kyle. And this episode wasn't the best for Kyle either. I think this was a good episode. I just don't think it was enough to save him. I think it's still a little one note. And I still think that Kyle's losing the game, honestly.
That's why, look, I feel like for this entire season, in my opinion, this is probably the biggest range that I've seen that I can think of between like a winner pick and you picking sixth place for Kyle. For me, it showed that, Kyle and Camilla still won't go home, but also Kyle told a lot of lies that people believed. People believed that. And Kyle got to the end by keeping Camilla and him under the radar. And that's still really big. Keeping that at a final 8? Really? You've had a few merge votes at this point, but for like nobody to question that. I mean, even with Kyle and Camilla being on the same, split double tribal before merge, still people aren't questioning that. That's really big. Yeah. That's really, really, really big. I just swapped. I felt that Kyle had a good episode because Kyle was able to get a successful navigation of votes onto David and off of Camilla or away from him and Camilla. To Kyle, it's as long as it's not me or Camilla, I'm okay with it. And Kyle keeps hitting. I don't feel like Kyle has taken a loss this entire game.
I just want to know where his relationship with Shaheen ends. Because, again, the entire season of him wanting Shaheen gone and not trusting him, only to immediately go to him. For whatever reason, it almost reminded me of, say, making her last-ditch effort going to Shaheen. I think all roads go back to Shaheen.
I think that's a good point, but that's going to be entirely dependent on who wins the Final Four immunity.
True.
Like, in all honesty, I really believe that, because if Shaheen wins it, great, then he will definitely be the winner. But if he loses, he's got to make fire. Like, we got to talk about that. Shaheen's got to make fire.
Yeah.
If he doesn't win a Final Four. I've said everything that I need to say about Kyle, but Kyle, I feel like he's still playing that under the radar game with his alliance. Kyle hasn't taken a loss this entire season. He'll only take a loss when Camilla goes home or he gets voted out, but he has always been on the right side.
If no one has my back, Jay has my back. I don't think he'll win. I feel like instead of him and Camilla running everything seems too perfect. And the fact that they know that they're running everything too is what's important to me.
I mean, if one of them makes it to the end, I think we got to talk about it. They played a very dominant game this season. Yeah. Very dominant. I'm sorry, Camilla. I have to give most of the props to Kyle because I feel like Kyle's been more flashy with it. Camilla, you're going to have to explain a little bit more of your game because your game was a little bit more behind the scenes. Things that were done more one-on-one and not out in the open. Kyle was very vocal, and Kyle was a very vocally dominant player, I would say, as opposed to Camilla, who's been a little bit more quiet and reserved in terms of like the open eye.
Yeah.
She's been an under-the-radar game, for sure. I
gotcha. And we're about to get to Shaheen.
Oh, yeah. The number one winner pick. Here we go.
But before we get into that.
Let me guess. Who is it?
It's actually Todd Herzog. Take it away, Todd Herzog.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I am here with Survivor Now podcast, the best source for Survivor information, to show off what I do for a living. So I make custom Funko Pops. If you haven't seen or heard, you can check it out on Instagram at Todd's Pop Shop, or you can message me, toddspopshop@gmail.com, to order your own. And if you mention this podcast, you will get $10 off and a free torch. So it's pretty freaking awesome. I'm going to show you a few right now. We've got Troyzan here, Phil from The Amazing Race, JLP, host of Australian Survivor, and look, little Charlie. Anybody you could possibly imagine or want yourself playing an LRG or an ORG, or just with your loved one or family or pets or anything like that, shoot me a message. I'm happy to make it. You also have the chance to win a free custom pop if you sign up for Survivor Now Podcast Fantasy League. So it's pretty awesome. And it's fun. Like, who doesn't want to be a part of that? So yeah, hit me up. Get your custom pops. It's great holiday gifts, great birthday gifts. We got a new season of Survivor right around the corner. I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. Let's get this going.
Shaheen is winning Survivor 48.
I'm seeing green right now. This entire screen is looking green. Third place winner. I think this is we both decided, final three. So take it away, Will.
Yeah. So I will agree with a lot of the points people are making against a Shaheen win. I do think his edit is very strange and very weird. I do think he has a lot of bad moments. I do think there's a lot of negativity that surrounds him. I think him getting labeled as a threat every other episode is crazy. I think him searching Kyle's bag and his episode 4 was a serious blunder. However, this was a really good episode for Shaheen, I think. I think Shaheen understood his position. The episode opens up with him saying, I know I got one vote from Chrissy, but the fact that I got that vote is a little concerning with where I stand in this game with the rest of my allies. I think the only bad thing about this episode was that he's still going on about how him and Camilla are allies. It is number one. That worked out this episode. And I think what's going to happen is I think there's going to be just a major shakeup. I think someone gets into his ear about how Kyle and Camilla have been duping him the entire game. It goes back to his confessional earlier about how he was wrong about everything, something he was very aware of, something that even though it's from a potential winner, a bad confessional to have, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for new era Survivor. I think I look at Jam Jam, I look at Gabler, I look at Marianne, I even look at Kenzie. All players who have had weird edits at different points in the game. I can even look at Rachel for being called a threat at halfway through the game and at every other point in the game where they're like, we'd be stupid not to take out Rachel. I think we hear the same thing about Shaheen, and over time, people are saying his name less and less. Yes, David was throwing him under the bus with Kyle. However, I think that kind of shifted the whole landscape of the hierarchy. And I think he's in a really good spot where him and Joe are kind of juggling two alliances, the Lagi 3 and the Siva 2.0. Or not Siva, Vula 2.0.
Yeah.
And while they're both in the middle between that, I also think Shaheen is able to hide under the radar because he doesn't have a duo, but he's able to hide behind other people.
So here's where I'm at with Shaheen, to be quite honest, and why I think Shaheen goes far. I don't see the winner potential. Here's why. I've talked throughout, previous episodes, this episode, that, just being susceptible to that, those many lies just tells me that, it's a major flaw, and I'm concerned about it. I will say that this was a good episode in some aspects. It showed us that Shaheen is able to have a lot of those conversations and plant those seeds, and also to be looked at as an essential part of, a vote out.
Yeah.
People wanted to use Shaheen as a vote, and come to him with ideas of who to vote out at Tribal. It's just I don't really like the fact that people aren't being 100% honest with him, and he's blindly believing it.
I don't think it's blind. I think he understands his position too. I think I go back to the Cedric boot, and Shaheen's like, I'm hopeful that I can cash in on my alliances. I'm hoping they don't backstab me. I hope I'm not the sucker. And that is enough restraint to where I don't think Shaheen is blind. Because if he was blind, he'd be like, yeah, I feel pretty good about this vote. I have Kyle and Camilla in my back pocket. We're good to go. Shaheen was nervous. And I think that is an important trait to have. Also, Gemini, what I mean about like the potential of like that 4 breaking up, I'm under the impression that in the next episode or in a future episode, Kyle and Camilla will try to make a move on Shaheen. And I think that'll backfire. Because I think people are going to view Kyle and Camilla as a bigger strategic force as they're able to hide under the radar. I think Shaheen is a much more visible threat, and I think that works out for him, especially when there's Joe and Eva, 2 players that haven't been targeted yet, and Kyle and Camilla, 2 players who have been making a lot of waves, and I understand. I also understand that, the Eva train is very nice, but, I
hopped off of it. I mean, I was on it last week, but this time I had to get back on Kyle. I've been on Kyle for at least 3, maybe 4 weeks. I've had Kyle at the top. Sorry, Shaheen. It's no knocks. I feel like Kyle really has been in the know of every single little bit of information, but has known 100% of the truth. And that's why I ranked him higher than Shaheen.
But the only thing I will go against that is that Kyle struggles at times playing under the radar. And I feel like Kyle opened this episode saying, he has to kind of be in the driver's seat. But really, a lot of the big power moves went back to the Lagi tribe. Understand he got into Shaheen's ear and Joe's ear, but the episode gives credit to Shaheen's planting of seeds across the last 4 days, and then Joe, who was able to flip Eva, because really the vote went back to Eva and whatever she wanted. And so Kyle wasn't as much in control as he really should have been this vote, which is exactly what he said at the start of the game. I will also say that I made a graph of my stocks across the last season,
Okay.
and I realized that my episode 1 winner pick was Eva. My episode 2 onward pick was Shaheen. So no matter how
It's always been Shaheen. You've never changed.
I had Shaheen at number 4, episode 1.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be
Shaheen for me has always been like, I've always looked at Shaheen as like a top 10 player pre-merge, and then more like a top 7 player for the merge. I can't say consistently top 3. There are just times I feel like he still needs to earn it. But I will say, I do think this next episode, Kyle and Camilla can't play passenger seat. I think they need to go driver's seat again. I think they need to push another name. If they want to stay on top, I think they got to push a Shaheen, or they got to push an Eva and make a move on one of those advantages, get rid of it. Because if they go another vote without them getting rid of it, you're pretty much guaranteeing that Joe and Eva are going to make it to 5.
Yeah. But at the same time, too, there's still 2 advantages in play. Yes, it's public knowledge, but that can still really swing the fences in any which way. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility for Joe to win another immunity challenge or Eva to win another immunity challenge. And that gives people a 50-50 shot to make the right move. And if Eva really wanted to be ballsy, if she really wanted to, she goes, realizes her potential. Let's just say someone gets in their ear, right? Because again, I'm going off the idea that they're going to figure out that they are being targeted, and that Kyle and Camilla aren't being truthful. I think that's why we've been seeing them play such a perfect game up to this point. And I think, one of those 3 wins immunity, and then Eva can just split the 2 advantages between the other 2 people. And no matter what, they'll be fine, right? Like, it's totally
and then
easy.
they vote out Eva, imagine.
No, but I'm saying if Joe wins immunity, she gives the safety without power to Shaheen. She plays the idol, and that kind of forces that alliance to fracture. They could even do what Malcolm, Reynolds, and Eddie did.
If you did that, you would need to make sure, and if you did that this next tribal, right, you need to make sure that Mitch, Mary, and Star will all vote unanimously on Kyle or Camilla. Make that move and play it so that all of them are safe, which leaves those other 5 as the only people who can be voted out.
Yeah.
That means Mitch, Star, and Mary have to go for Kyle or Camilla. That's the only way that would work.
And again, I really think that Mary is going to blame Kyle. I don't know why I think that, but I think to Mary's perspective, the alliance fell apart when Kyle was weary of voting out Camilla. And I think she's going to use that information and realize that a hidden duo is a lot scarier than an obvious duo. Because once you get to final 5, you can try to get in. Mary is going to think that she can get in Shaheen's ear at the very least and try to split up Joe and Eva. Even if Shaheen doesn't do that and is goading for them to win and Eva wins regardless, there's still the potential to maneuver a final 5, knowing that Joe and Eva are a crazy obvious pair. What's a lot more threatening is the secret pair, the secret duo. And that's kind of where it all goes back. Camilla saying, I think maybe she's just talking about Star, maybe, or Mitch, or maybe Mary, but one of those 3. But I think that might be it for the rest of the cast. I mean, is there anything we've forgotten or missed out on?
No, not much. Like I've said everything I needed to say.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna go through the little outro and chat. If there's any other questions or things you want to mention, now is the time. Speak now, forever hold your peace. And by forever, I mean until next Thursday night at 8 p.m. where we get more. Where's our pop-up? We don't have a button. Where we get more Survivor StockWatch. And then you can also tune in Wednesday night at 7 p.m. to do the pre-show. Always a fun time with the pre-show, and plus you get more Ollie action, which is what we all want. And then there's also the after show, which happens right after the episode airs. And you get more of Abraham because Abraham is a great guy. And then there's also got something for you Saturdays at 3 p.m. Always a fun time having Ollie Matthew back on our screens, and Phil as well. And then there's Survivor Social, which happens Sundays at 8 p.m. Great show, great people who work it. If you haven't seen it, me and Kara did the Survivor Game Changers recap during the off season. And so if you want the mesh between Survivor Social and StockWatch, you have something to watch until next Thursday. And who do you think is going home? I think Star. I think Star or Kyle.
Eva.
I hope so.
Calling it. I'm calling it right now.
If Eva goes, that's going to be the craziest episode, and I'm here for it.
And if I call it, I'm starting the episode off by saying, "Didn't I say this?
Didn't I say it?
Like, is this recorded? Like, that's what I said.
It'd be a great episode.
I'm gonna get the clip. I'm gonna replay it.
And we thank you all for watching and tuning in. We really appreciate the little community we've been having on Survivor StockWatch. Truly a fantastic community. And Daryl, Eva's winning. Daryl, I can't wait if Shaheen wins. I'm gonna let you know. Like, I'm gonna be happy. I think you'll be happy too, because you seem very against Eva and Joe, which made me chuckle throughout the stream. But until then, peace.